swampy. It's
Swamp.
it's what you would expect. It's swampy. It is I don't know how else to describe it. Humid, swamp ass, sweat down your back, nothing ever dries. And
Oh, lovely.
yeah, and you hate life for it.
Oh, cool. Bit like visiting Chester then.
Oh, hey Bill.
Hi, Ran. How's it going?
It's going good. That wasn't rehearsed. Uh, so the start of the season is upon us, and our second matchup is going to be AFC Wimbledon.
Yeah. So quite funny, really, that our second league game would be against the club that had their identity stolen in the last game. It's kind of a weird back to back, but yeah, we'll go through Wimbledon in a minute. I'm sure you've got some questions to ask.
I do have questions. I'd like to present this to you. I give you some of the information that I found from your Wrexham perspective. You give me a letter grade back. Just to be clear, C is passing. So if you give me anything below a C, it meant I failed, and I will perform Harikari Bushido code.
I'll just let you know though that a pass goes up to G in the UK. So if I give you a G, you've still passed, but like bare minimum.
Really?
Just as a teacher, grade wise, U is a fail, and then G upwards is a pass.
Is that
anything
good?
below C is no.
Is U unacceptable? G is good, or
I don't even know what U stands for. G is U. I don't know why. I don't know, but U, G. I don't know my alphabet now. F, E, and D are like a certain level of pass, and then C upwards is another level of pass, basically. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
My dad's friend managed to convince his parents that U stood for university pass. So maybe if you do get a U, we'll call it a university pass.
I am a college drunk level succeeding. I'll take it. All right. So some of the notes I have, obviously here, we bookended into MK Dons. This is the other team, the other half that dissolved when MK Dons went over to Milton Keynes.
That's right.
Keynes. And then the supporters created AFC Wimbledon, and they couldn't use the same name. They had to come up with a new name. And so then they just put the AFC in the front. And that was the no-brainer. And then I'm not sure at what point in time, but then MK Dons sent back the trophies and things that they had got under Wimbledon. And then the real Dons, the AFC Wimbledon, got back the trophies in the history and got to use the 1889 since founded. So then they're back to the original club. And then they had to go back into the 9th tier and start again into the football pyramid. I don't know each step of when they got promoted from each league, but I did see they had 6 promotions in 13 years.
Yeah.
And
I won't even give you a grade for that part because you already know the numbers better than me, but carry on.
And then I had to pause it. I was looking at some of the players and I was like, holy shit, that guy was in something I saw. And it was one of the Wimbledon players. And I was like, that guy, I know that guy. Hold on. And then so I had to look up football players turned actors. And then I saw one of them, the name said Vinnie Jones. And I'm like, I think that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. And so then it did turn out he was in an episode of a show I watched called Psych. And he played a ruffian, a bad guy, the bruiser that beat up people.
Yeah, he's also in, for those of you slightly more well-known, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yes.
Is huge in the UK, and Snatch. So
and Snatch. Yeah.
And loads of other things, but those are the two things he's known for as an actor, really.
Yeah, which are big movies. Like most people that are cinephiles in the US know those movies too.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
they're huge in the UK as well. So it's yeah.
yeah. And I was like, I was telling Dylan, I was like, hold on, I know who that guy is. It's like he always plays like a hard ass, like a bruiser, a bad guy that, like, and then turns out he was that way. He was a bruiser in the when he played too. At one point in time, I don't remember the year, but it might have been 88. The Wimbledon beat Liverpool in the FA Cup final. So they have that under their belt. And then now I don't know about this disaster, but it was cited as a cause for shutting down Plough Lane where they play or where they used to play. And it was the Hillsborough disaster. I guess some fans got killed or trampled. And
so Hillsborough is a ground in Sheffield. It's Sheffield Wednesday's ground. So for those who was following Wrexham last year, we played Sheffield United. They're one team in Sheffield. The other team in Sheffield Wednesday, playing Hillsborough. When the FA Cup in the semi-finals, they're played in Wembley now, but they used to be played at neutral venues. So Liverpool played Nottingham Forest in Sheffield Wednesday's ground because it was sort of seen as like a ground that was halfway between the two. It's a really controversial incident because 96 people died on the day or close to the day, and the death toll is now 97 because someone died recently. It took them that long from the 80s for their injuries to eventually catch up with them. The reason they passed away was because of that day. A lot of the British media blamed the Liverpool fans when actually there was a lot more to it, and the police could have done more to prevent the overfilling of the ground happening. So all grounds in the top tier had to stop having standing only sections, and they had to move to the whole ground had to be seating. And I don't know particularly about Plough Lane, but obviously a lot of clubs couldn't necessarily afford to knock down an entire stand and just or just erect seats where there were standing areas previously. So that, I mean, I don't know specifically with Plough Lane, but that sounds about right. That could be something that they struggled to change the ground to meet those requirements.
And I think that year was around 91, and that they went to Solhurst Park. And
that's Crystal Palace's ground.
Crystal Palace's ground. Yeah. And that they were playing in Crystal Palace's ground for a temporary basis, which ended up being they needed to come up similar to Wrexham. They needed to come up with X amount of money for the renovations to get their own ground. And so I don't know, this might be too much into the Wimbledon lore, but there was some different protests from fan groups, and one of them, they brought a whole bunch of black balloons and released them. And I don't know if that's a significance in football or it was something particular to them. Does that sound familiar?
That would have been particular to them. It's not something I've heard of. I know that they had a string of dodgy owners, and one owner in particular whose name's escaping me right now. He was the one that moved them between a lot of different grounds, and they had a lot of problems with him before they sold on to MK Dons. So yeah, I'd imagine, black balloon protest sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then similar to Wrexham, they had a real estate developer that came in and wanted to level Plough Lane, put in flats. And it's like, oh, that sounds familiar. That sounds awfully familiar. So at one point in time after the Milton Keynes move happens, they do level Plough Lane and then put in flats. Okay, so they entered when AFC Wimbledon formed, and they joined back into the football, or not even to the football league, but just playing football. They're a club. They went into the 9th league, and it combined counties or countries or combined counties.
Yeah, counties. So once, I won't break the detail down completely, but once you go below the National League, it then starts becoming regionalized. So it goes National League North and South. Those who watch the documentary will remember, but it starts breaking down into teams that are just playing from the same or different counties, but the counties that are in a small vicinity with each other. So they all play in that really small sort of area where you are literally playing other non-league teams from down the road, basically. And they were way too big for the division they were in.
And they said they were going to places where it's like basically a park, and somebody's walking their dog and stops to watch the game, and or doesn't stop and keeps on walking. I
Yeah.
mean, however, AFC Wimbledon is showing up with, 1,000 fans to this, small town to sit with no stadium or no seats and watch the game,
Yeah.
which is the parallels to Wrexham and the story seem so similar. Is that something that through the history of football in the England or the UK that this has happened?
They were the first big team to be bought out by their supporters, and actually the way that they did it provided a model for other teams to do it. You won't hear me praise Chester very often, but Chester went bust at one point, and they followed the same model off the back of Wimbledon doing it successfully. So they folded as Chester City and then became Chester FC, or which way? Yeah, it is that way around. Yeah. They went through I don't think they got knocked down as low as Wimbledon did, but they went through the leagues in a similar sort of fashion. And then when we went through our second set of big troubles in a similar sort of time period, there was an owner that we had that didn't really get covered in the documentary much, actually. And I'd imagine that was for legal reasons. So I will try not to say too much, because if the powerful Hollywood owners and their solicitors and lawyers and whatever can't navigate that one, I'm not going to touch it with a barge pole. But do your research on Jeff Moss, and you'll figure out why we did have a second set of owners that messed us about. But when he sold the club, he sold it to our supporters trust, and we followed the Wimbledon model. And a lot of clubs have done that since. So they were pioneers in a lot of ways, I think, in the way that they did things.
That's awesome. And you said you wouldn't touch them with a barge pole, and over here we say we wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
But yeah.
And we did a graveyard tour, and one of the things they told us, if you've heard of that saying, wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole, it comes from when yellow fever swept through New Orleans, and they thought that it could be transmitted through air. So they would have 10-foot poles to create a distance in between. So like somebody with yellow fever, they wouldn't touch even with a 10-foot pole.
Right, I see. Yeah,
for
that
fear
makes
of
sense.
Catching it. And no, it's just like crazy, because I'm like, I'm in New Orleans and you just said a barge pole, and that's So I have that the Plow Lane bond was raised by the supporters for 5.4 million, and then in 2020 they actually came back to Plow Lane and had a stadium erected. I forgot how many millions of, but it's only 100 yards from where the original stadium was. And so like a really good return to the history, and you could get a sense of feel of that same type of loyalty and love for the football club, similar to Wrexham. Is that also something that's very prevalent, or is it unique to these older teams?
It's a good question. I think teams are so bonded to their communities in the UK, particularly football teams, and there's always every club has got a hardcore of about 2,000 or 3,000 nutters who will do anything to keep their football club alive. And, there's plenty of clubs that have gone through what we've gone through, and they just haven't had that luck of finding the owners that we have. But a lot of clubs have also been saved by their supporters. There's a recent example in Bury FC. They have had dodgy owners. They should be a League 2, League 1 club, really, but they've lost their football league status and will be climbing the leagues back up. But they've only just recently got back into their ground. It's unfortunately, when the money started coming into football in the early 90s, so did the people who looked to exploit it, and it was a lot of clubs have been left for the fans to save these clubs from going bust.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime there's an opportunity to make money, somebody will find a way to make more money off that opportunity, for sure. This is the other thing I found like really interesting is AFC Wimbledon is also the team that Hank Green and John Green, the American YouTubers from like Crash Course and stuff that I watched when I was like getting my degree, Crash Course. So I knew them outside of that they actually bought in and sponsor. And so they're, I don't know, the original American investors into English football.
Oh man, the original American investors. Yeah, they're probably up there. I'd have to see when they got involved, but I know the Glazers at United have, they've been involved for years, but probably a good example of Americans getting involved lower down the pyramid rather than right at the very top early on. Yeah. No, they're a cracking club, Wimbledon. They were, I've got to say, give you a solid A for that round. That was nice little roundup of everything to do with them as a club.
Well, we're done here. I know when to end things. That was a high note. That's a win. I'm not Michael Jordan. I'm not going to come back and play baseball. I'm good where I'm at right now. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. So in terms of them as a club and their history with Wrexham, growing up, even though they had all those financial problems, they were still in the Premier League for some of my earlier years. I don't really have I remember them sort of going bust, but I don't have a real clear memory of that because I was quite young when it all happened. Sorry, my cat's going absolutely mental, and it's just all I can hear is a squealing in the back. I don't know if you can hear it, but I
can't hear it. But there's little flashes in the background where red just flashes up for a second. It's like, oh, there's movement back there.
Down, probably. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. When they went bust and reformed, by the time we got relegated into the National League, they were still there. I think. Oh, you may have to double check, but I think they got promoted either in our first or second year in the National League. Could be. I'm pretty sure they definitely went up through the playoffs, but I can't remember whether it was quite early on in us being in the National League though. Again, a bit like the MK Dons thing. It's kind of funny that they're in this league now and we've gone up, and after us coming down, we're sort of meeting them there a little bit. I know they got relegated not last season, the season before, but they've actually got, we can get on to Wigan a bit later, but they've actually got a lot of parallels with Wigan as a club. They were both non-league until the late 70s. Wimbledon got promoted into what would have been the equivalent of League Two in 77-78 season. Wigan started in the equivalent of League Two the same year. So that back then, League Two used to be split into Northern and Southern. Have we got this? Some hand signals.
Trust me, I was listening, but I figured she wouldn't leave until somebody petted her. So
she's a little pain. They both. Yeah. Back then, League Two was split into a Northern and Southern league. And they both went up. Wigan went into the Northern League, Wimbledon into the Southern League. They've both gone through periods of having a lot of money and success and not having money and success. And they've both won the FA Cup as a bit of a shock. So Wigan beat Man City in the Cup in the early 2010s. And obviously Wimbledon did it in the 80s. Wimbledon, though, when they were still Wimbledon FC in the 80s, they sort of had a very interesting philosophy. They used to be known as the Crazy Gang purely because the entire team was full of nutters. You mentioned Vinnie Jones earlier. He was the captain, and there was a reason he plays hard men in every film or TV show he's been in, and it's because he was an actual hard man. He was actually captain for Wales for a little bit. He's the most English bloke going, but his granddad was Welsh, and he got some game time for Wales. I think he only played low 10s, maybe 20s amount of games, but for a couple of games he was captain. He's even gone on to say later that he regretted that because he wished he'd have played for England.
Oh man, he was getting cooler in my book.
No, he seems all right, Vinnie Jones. He's anyone who plays for Wales, even if they didn't necessarily want to play for Wales, is always going to get a thumb up from me. But so they were nutters. There's loads of photos of Vinnie Jones like really hard tackling people, the kind of tackles that would get you a red card instantly now that maybe didn't even get yellow back then. There's a really famous photo of him grabbing the testicles of another player, Paul Gascoigne, for those who may remember that name. But the whole team were nutters, and they battered their way through the leagues basically and won the FA Cup in a quite inglorious manner. But hey, that's football. If Phil Parkinson turned around tomorrow and just said, you know what, we're just going to batter every team we come across and we end up winning the FA Cup, I really wouldn't care. So it's one of those, it's fair dues to them. And they're not necessarily known for that now, but they're a very solid, well-supported team that deserve to be in the Football League. And, you know, that if it wasn't for the fact that they were in the same league as Wrexham, I'd be wanting them to do well and get promoted, because any team that's fan-owned deserves that kind of respect, really.
And I think there's still the charter or agreement that they have is it must remain 75% fan-owned. So no matter what sponsorship or things come in,
they've got that in there. Yeah, that I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of fan-owned clubs have similar things like that in place.
One of the questions that I had for you, you were mentioning about them recently getting relegated in the last 2 years back to League Two. Are they a team that we have history head-to-head matches with?
We do. I can quickly Google the head-to-head record. But it might actually be quite hard to see what the head-to-head record is, just because of the fact that they've reformed. I know we did beat them the year that they went up, but I'm not entirely sure what our record is like against them. Bear with me 1 second. So we have, so they were only in our league for one season as AFC Wimbledon. We have played them 3 times because we've played them in it was two seasons. We've beat them twice, drawn once, and lost once. But that's the new Wimbledon. In terms of playing them as Wimbledon FC, I'm sure we've got some sort of a record, but it would take some digging, just because of after look through for the old team. I do remember us playing them in the cup, in the cup that we're going to be playing Wigan in the 90s. And we lost, but I can't remember the context of the game too much because I was a little kid in the stands then just watching it.
Yeah, so we don't have a big rivalry or...
No, nothing like that. Probably only mutual respect, really, for the fan ownership periods.
Yeah, because I was wondering...
I say mutual respect. Who knows with the popularity, shall we say, of Wrexham at the moment, whether they'll come to us with any mutual respect or not. But I think it's there's nothing there really in terms of any animosity.
I watched a preview of where a fan thinks that AFC Wimbledon is going to finish in the season, and they said probably around 10th or 11th. It would be great if they do finish around there. So the hopes for the team aren't very high, and I think one of the players even got transferred to Notts County.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, funnily enough, speaking of player transfers, Ollie Palmer, we bought Ollie Palmer from AFC Wimbledon, and he was their top scorer. And I think he's actually a Wimbledon fan. I think it's just kind of the money that was on offer at Wrexham meant that it was too good for him to turn down. But he's from that neck of the woods, and he grew up a Wimbledon fan, played for him a couple of times, I think, actually. And when we bought him, he was their top scorer. And they were teetering on the edge of relegation. And I think maybe us buying him, there's a good chance that sort of contributed to them not staying up in League One. So
yeah.
It could be that Wimbledon won't like us when we go and visit them.
We're the team that took the player. The second worst franchise, FC, after MK Dons. The Hollywood money. But hey, they can't get mad about Hollywood money because they have... John Green wrote Fault in Our Stars.
You'd be surprised, Ram. British people are incredibly cynical, bitter. Maybe I don't know. You've come to visit Wrexham, and maybe it's not the best time to visit at the moment because everyone's pretty buzzing about the football. But generally, British people can be really, really bitter. I quite enjoy it, but
I won't underestimate it. Yeah. If it comes up, okay. Yes. Yeah. Bill warned me. I know. Do you know anything about the players?
So I have had a quick research. It's not necessarily a team that I have a lot of familiarity with, but in terms of their current squad, they have a player on loan from Stockport County. They've just rebought a midfielder, Jake Reeves, who is their captain. Been brought in as their captain. He's played from twice previously, once on loan, and he played for 2 years before moving on to Bradford. But he's played for a couple of clubs, including Notts County, and then he's come back to Wimbledon. They also have Alex Pearce, who's an Irish player, who's their vice captain. He's played for a lot of clubs as well. Played a long time at Derby and Millwall and Reading. So they've got some good players. A very, from what I can tell, and I hope I'm not too wrong, but a quite middle of the road sort of League Two club. Really looking at the players that they do have. But like I said in the last one, we're still a little bit behind on what the current state of players and squads are in League One and League Two, purely from not having been in the division for 15 years. So unless I recognize a name, I'm not going to know who they are necessarily. Yeah. We'll see. Look, the quality of players at any team in League Two, they're going to be as good as the top half at the very least of the National League, if not the top sort of 7 or 8. So they're going to be a good side, and it'll be interesting to see how we match up in our first away game.
So any matchup, even a mid-table team, that still could be a loss or
be
a draw.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one thing that I hope. I don't want to sound patronizing, so please, keep that in mind if I do. But one thing some of the international fans might need to get used to is losing games.
Yeah.
We've not lost a lot of games over the last 2 years. And we're going to come stuck in games where you watch it and you just think, how has that happened? But these are squads that could challenge us. Any given day they could challenge us. I fully expect us to do well this season, and even like we said in the last pod, get a sort of top 3, maybe top 4 or 5. But we've got to keep in mind that we're not just going to go to every ground and beat them like we have been over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Now they are coming to Wrexham, right? I can't remember.
No, we're going to Wimbledon.
We are going there,
and we're going to come into us, I think.
Oh yeah, that's how it is. Yeah. Wigan, then okay, yeah. So I don't know what the allocation is yet for Wrexham away fans.
I don't know how many it is, but I know it's sold out already.
It doesn't look big.
Sure it's sold out.
Their Plough Lane doesn't look large. I don't know how much they seat, but
it's 9,200, and I'd imagine of that we'd probably get at least 1,000. I think they have to give us 10%, so it will be at least 900. But they might give us, I don't know what size their away end is, so they might give us a bit more. So the away end has 1,465 capacity, so they might not give us all of that if they cordon some of it off for the policing. But it's going to be roughly that though.
So that's still enough to make some noise.
Absolutely.
We've seen from the past 2 seasons, Wrexham travel well.
Yeah. And, as is the case for a lot of clubs, London is the place to go and move to. Everyone, a lot of people in the UK, if you want to guarantee yourself a job, you move to London. So pretty much every club in the country is going to have a pretty sizable fan base in London. So you'll always get people going from the area to away games, and the southern games are weirdly well represented with Wrexham fans generally. But I mean, these days are tickets like gold dust. I'm on holiday, so I can't actually go to that game, but I would have liked to have gone. I would have gone if I could have been there, But it's going to be a good one. I'm jealous of everybody who's got tickets.
Yeah, now a little early. We haven't seen either team play in the regular season. What are you thinking prediction wise?
A lot of it depends on the squad, really. It's much too early to say. Looking at their pre-season games, they beat Wealdstone earlier in the week, something you'd expect them to do. But Wealdstone aren't a bad side. They've beaten Portsmouth, who were in League One. They've drawn with QPR, who are in the Championship. They drew with Woking, who are obviously in the National League. So, they seem to have done quite well in pre-season. That means absolutely stuff all generally. I've seen, like I said it before, but seen Wrexham have fantastic pre-seasons and then look rubbish, and then vice versa. But I mean, they seem to play quite a solid formation. Just having a quick look at their last game in League Two last season, they played 4-3-3, but that might have been that the wingers were a bit deeper, so it could have been a 4-1-4-1, which is quite defensive if it's employed that way, or it can be quite attacking. It really depends on the tactics. But genuinely, it's too tough to call. Too early, too tough to call. But 5-0 Wrexham, why not?
I was watching some highlights of the top goals from last season for AFC Wimbledon, and I think the guy's name was Chislett or something like that. And he had, a couple of screamers on free kicks that looked scary. And I didn't see if he's still on the team right now, but they're definitely just well-placed balls. And it's like, okay, that guy looks scary if there's a free kick opportunity for him.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I mean about the clubs at this level. Even the mediocre or the more mediocre teams, they will have that little bit of quality where they can just punish you. A lot of the players that we've signed over the last couple of years are players that might have been playing in teams like AFC Wimbledon. Well, Ollie Palmer was from AFC Wimbledon, but they might not be taking like Aaron Hayden, for example. He was playing for Carlisle, who did really well last season, but the year we signed Hayden, they'd been a bit rubbish in League Two that year. So just because the team might not do very well, they're always all these teams are all going to have like one or two players who are pretty good that could always jump up a gear or be signed by a team that are a bit stronger in that league and, sort of progress further. We'll soon get a flavour for it, though. The first couple of games in a season are crazy. The year we went down, we started absolutely fantastically, and then it just went. So we'll see.
I'll give them the 2-1. If that guy's still on the team and he makes one free kick out of however many they get, that's the one goal. And 2 from us coming from, Palmer has to return the favor of welcome back to Plough Lane.
That'd be great.
Okay, Bill. So you gave me an A on my AFC Wimbledon knowledge. I give you a B on your knowledge, but it's only B for baby and me or Bill. So that's still an A in the US letter grading, or in the UK, what is a top score?
A star. So we have A star, A, B.
A star. A gold star, and I'll put it right on your chest. You wear that home and you show it off with pride. I like you am a little bit trepidatious in saying a score or a prediction, and ready to see how both teams and how Wrexham approaches the season. Definitely excited, and we're on the eve of the first game coming up. So
yeah, really exciting. Do you know what? It always feels like it's great for the football to be back until that first goal goes in from the opposition, and you're sat in that reality of, oh yeah, this is what it's like.
Oh yeah, it's not all wins.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm gonna keep saying this. You American listeners, you need to be careful, and they might just prove me wrong and just keep winning. So let's keep our fingers crossed. And bit of American optimism doesn't always go amiss, does it?
Yeah. Well, and on Bill Hart's final words, Americans, you're gonna learn today. You're gonna learn today. Well, thank you for teaching me how to Wrexham when we're facing AFC Wimbledon. Like always, big thank you. You are the man.
No, you're the man.
Oh, well, I am. No. Until next time, this has been Bill Long. Wait, did we do that backwards? Man. All right, Bill. Catch you next time. Hopefully, maybe we can wear the same clothes if we want to go another day and do a Wigan preview.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make sure I'll just wear the hoodie. No problem.
Okay. I'm going to wash this for sure before
we
do it. But yeah.